Like Judith, Richard Lang is a multimedia artist who addresses the human predicament from within and without. Most notably, he's created a haven for the muse, manifested as the Electric Works, a gallery, store, and printmaking studio in San Francisco's South of Market district. Artists enter into a collaborative effort in which, as Electric Works partner Anthony Luizi says, creative process always trumps protocol. As for collectors, there's a mentality to promote art for the people, accessibility of art for everyone. So I'll ask you the same question I asked Judith. Why be creative?
Why be creative is a couple of things. First of all, it's a gift you receive. And you feel like, well, there's two sides of creativity. There's the actual inspiration that comes through, and then there's the action that happens as a result of that. And the action is the place where the gift is returned. So the inspiration comes as this incredible feeling. I mean, there's nothing like it when you feel inspired. The muse is visiting. It's like falling in love. And then there's the action, which is you are in the receipt of this incredible gift, and you just want to give it back. In German, the word gift means poison. I don't know if you know that. Directly translated gift. A present that you give to someone in German is a Geschenk. But a gift means poison, and it was a puzzle to me, and I thought, well, that's a lot of artists feel frustrated because they're in the receipt of this gift, and they feel poisoned by it until they return it, and the gift needs to flow. The suffering that artists describe so much in their lives is exactly that.
Why do you suppose you are creative versus other people?
I think everybody is. The people who started this country were incredibly creative minds. Washington was the least creative of all of them, but he was a power guy, and you need a power guy. I had a dad who was a businessman, but he was wildly creative with
Very
his
inspiring.
business practices, and he did things that were weird and challenging, and to the business community. And that was an inspiration to me, that you could do things how you wanted to do them. You shape things the way you wanted to shape things. It was your world. And so why am I don't know. Why did it happen to me? I think absolutely everyone is creative, has creative potential, but it really means listening carefully to the quieter voices, and they're largely drummed out by not popular culture, but largely drummed out by the political culture that we live in, political consumerist culture, of which I'm certainly a part, but it's those little voices are really just slammed down by that. Everything else is sort of gross and way too substantial to let the muse in. The muse is ephemeral. I have a kind of intuitive mind that jumps from one thing to another fairly quickly, and so how do I incorporate that into my work? And so over 30 years of doing this now, what I do is I make these pieces of things that you see around here. You see, what I do is I make these, just tons of this stuff. Some of it's hand painted. This is a digital print. A lot of it's drawing plants and animals that are really big. And they eventually float into a shape. And the metaphor would be like a coral reef. There's plankton floating around, and it attaches itself to in this case, a kind of core of meaning. And then things start to build out of that. And so that's how I work out of my own core, is paying attention to the things. Number one, the natural world. Number two, the natural world with light falling on it. not concepts, but the way light falls across animals and plants. I really like that. So, but a lot of my work has really good humor in it. This is called Goofball Sends a Love Letter to Nurse Nancy, who sends it back 10 times. Anyway, you get the idea. This is a little amusing on the apple.
Yeah.
Here's Erzuli. She's the goddess of rivers and love. And so I was working on this. There's a little poem that came up. Often I'm permitted to return to a meadow. This is just the last lines. As if it were a given property of the mind that certain bounds hold against chaos, that is a place of first permission, everlasting omen of what is. If you want a Muse poem, there it is, Robert Duncan. The Muse comes, and then there are things that you have to do that you don't want to do, and that you feel a responsibility for, and it's sort of putting yourself out in a way that you might not think is a good idea. So there is a cruelty in it. It's not definitely the receiving of other people's musings is nurturing. The receipt of your own muse is apt to all sorts of shenanigans. Yeah, I mean, it can be an incubus. It can be a cruelty, to what you think your life should be. Ultimately, of course, nourishing. I mean, it's the imagination that is the strongest power in the world right now, the human imagination. And our politics are completely driven by imagination. Our politics are poetry. They're not real. Bush's last speech was a complete musing on war and power. Didn't have anything to do with reality. It was his projection on the world. Judith and I have been to France a couple of times and gone to the caves in the Dordogne region and sat in there. We're teaching painting classes, so we could sit in there. And in a few places the government allows groups of artists to go there and sit with no tourists, and you just sit quietly, and you can draw the paintings, and this is an amazing thing. I mean, I don't know anyone who walks into one of those caves the first time doesn't break down. I mean, you just see the power of human imagination, and this is a shit that's remained after 30,000 years.
Art isn't efficient. A lot of people think of it as a luxury.
Well, that would be like saying breathing is a luxury, which some people feel it's, you don't deserve to take your next breath. Creativity is not a luxury. In my business, my printmaking business, we create items that you would call luxury items, because they're very expensive, some of them, and they're bought by people who have a lot of money. And the commodities that art produces are sometimes luxury items. I don't know if that has a pejorative to you. Is luxury a good thing or a bad thing?
I was saying it as a pejorative, yeah.
Oftentimes I talk to other artists that I work with and talk about, hail to thee, fellow traveler in the fields of the useless. Because art is completely useless. It defies use. And we sell art for a lot of money, and it's intrinsically valueless. So the whole idea of luxury is that some people have it and some people don't. The deep truth is that everyone has this abundance of creativity if you just let yourself. And it takes a certain amount of rigor, but a very little amount in order to access it. And what the Muse asks of you is that you pay attention every day. But you only have to pay attention for 15 minutes. But you really have to pay attention, and you have to come from your deepest core of yourself. If you do that, the miracles start to happen. And I don't say that lightly. I mean, really true, miraculous things happen.